listening to the Postcast, presented by the Locked On Senators podcast, and, of course, the Glebe Central Pub. I'm your host, Brandon Piller, joined by longtime friend of the show, back for more Postcast action. It's Jack Richardson. You guys know him on Sens Twitter. Also a reporter with Brockville and CTV Ottawa. Jack, glad to have you back. Unfortunately, it's not the juiciest of games to sink into here as the Ottawa Senators lose 2-0 to the Florida Panthers. Jack, what was your main takeaway from this game here?
Look, Pilsy, it wouldn't be a postcast with the two of us if the Sens didn't score a goal and if they were in the middle of just an absolute depressing streak. But it feels like this whole season has been like that. But yeah, it's great to be back. Happy to hop on with you here. And I love the postcast. It was awesome doing it last year. I think it's been about a year, honestly. It was probably around this time.
Yeah, feels that way.
It's the last one I hopped on. Yeah, so it's been a long time coming. But yeah, I'm even though the game was probably the most boring one from a Sens perspective to talk about, I'm excited to be back on and just talk some Sens hockey here.
Yep, we're glad to have you back on. And unfortunately, this was a game where we've seen the Florida Panthers beat the absolute wheels off the Ottawa Senators. We've seen it twice already this season, 6-0 and 5-0. And then there was that game where the Florida Panthers were just barely able to edge by 3-2. So we weren't sure, was this game going to be in the middle of that, where the Senators going to be able to overcome that? And unfortunately, it's just kind of a meh game where, sure, you're glad the Panthers don't stack up the points like they did last time, but a 2-0 loss for the Ottawa Senators. Shutout for the third time up against the Florida Panthers in this season in 4 games. Jack, even though it would have meant nothing, it would have been really nice just to get one goal with the goalie pulled, just so you can stop that shutout from happening. Because I don't know, maybe it was probably sometime in the COVID season when the Oilers and Canucks were dunking on the Sens, but I can't remember a time where the Ottawa Senators just get beaten down this badly by one team in the same season.
Yeah, and it makes it so much worse that it's Brady's older brother, and that's
so much worse.
Like this is what, the second year. This is the second year that Matthew's in the same division as Brady, and it sucks because we're getting little brothered every time. And I'm everyone here loves Brady Tkachuk. No Sens fan has a right to not like him at this point. I don't think even what he said at the beginning of the season about the fans, like, I think that's out the window. He's having a great season. He could have a career year. But his brother's a better player. He has a better team, and they've been the better team in this division this whole time. Getting shut out 3 times against them in 4 games, going 0-4 against them, is a tough look. And it's like, it's not even, you're right, the game didn't matter tonight at all. Like, if anything, this is a good result because we're tanking. Maybe we'll talk some draft. Top 5 pick is on the horizon. But yeah, this is one you'd like to see them put up a little bit of a fight in, because down the line, I've seen some people talking about it already. How are we supposed to expect these guys to, like, compete? This is the team that they would play if they snuck into the playoffs this year. This isn't even one of the best teams. Like, I think the Rangers and the Bruins and Hurricanes are all ahead of these guys. So if they can't find a way to get past the Panthers in the regular season, like, we're just looking at a first round sweep if they manage to sneak in. So it's another reminder, a long way to go for these guys. But like, they are still right there, if that makes sense. Like, they didn't play poorly tonight. I think Korpisalo looked great. To all things considered, he stopped. Sounds so bad, but he stopped the first 2 shots on goal, ending a 4-game streak of letting in a goal on the first 2 shots. But the team looked okay. It just felt like the Panthers were defending really well. That's what I saw. I didn't see, like, I don't think Stolarz stole the game by any means. He obviously made every save, but it didn't feel like they got robbed at all. But the Panthers defended well. They're getting into playoff mode here, and it's not fun losing to your sibling, I'd imagine. And it's not fun as a Sens fan now going through this year. And Matthew has undoubtedly gotten the better of Brady in this 2-year division rivalry, if you want to call it.
Yeah, that's probably true, Jack. Like, it's probably, we think it's hard on us. We think it's hard on the team, but there's probably no one in the world that being on the wrong side of this rivalry is more hard on than Brady Tkachuk. Little brother syndrome is not fun to deal with, especially when you're a professional athlete. But here on the Postcast, we've kind of we've created different genres of the Postcast. It's the Postcast where we vent or revibe. So you got a Vibecast for the vibing, vent cast for the venting. And then when we said, okay, there's more layers to this, then we started adding the tank cast, when all you could do is be like, hey, this is good for the tank. We're tanking hard. This was a great blowout loss, even though it's embarrassing. Let's try to spin zone it. And then that wasn't even enough. We added the fine cast, where, it's not great. It's not terrible. It's just fine. And although this could be somewhere in between a tank cast and a fine cast, this really seems more to me just like, that's fine. Like, they didn't get the wheels beaten off them. Like you said, Korpisalo didn't have that one embarrassing goal. There wasn't times where the Florida Panthers were just toying with the Ottawa Senators here. We've said on a couple shows that there's times where teams are just like playing with their food with the Ottawa Senators. Like, they're already beating them and then scoring these highlight reel goals. We didn't see any of that tonight. So I think maybe people in the chat, let me know if you got a different vibe out of this one. But this doesn't feel like a panic mode, embarrassed, palm face, lost Jack. It just feels like this is fine. This is fine.
Yeah, like it's such a weird spot to be in, because we've known the season's been over since, I don't know about you, but like January, even when they made that push, it's just the streakiness they had in February and all of that, and in March and everything like that. Like, I've wrapped the book on them this season. It was earlier than now, but I know they just got officially eliminated this past weekend against New Jersey. But like, it's a game where you're looking for little things. So I'm looking personally. I was looking at Ridley Gregg, looking at Pinto, how they filled in as 1 and 2 centermen without Stutzlo, without Norris, and Ridley Gregg I thought looked good. Pinto kind of struggled on both of those 2 goals against. I feel like you can point out what Pinto was doing, turned it over on, I believe, the second one. And then I'm using him as an example on that. The ended up being the game winner, Lundell's first goal with that stretch pass from Stolarz. Yep. That one, he wasn't the only one at fault. The whole change was, but he was the last guy to kind of change. So he saw it and he was kind of highlighted on that. But yeah, Pinto, like, so that's what I was looking for. I'm looking for, what are the younger guys on the team doing? I'm looking at a guy like, JBD, just guys who you think are probably trying to be out there proving something, going in this last stretch. Like, there's a ton of players who have absolutely nothing to play for. They know they're going to be back here next season. Know it's going to be a new coach, even though Martinez and Alfie are probably going to be in the fold. Yep. Like, why would you be putting your body on the line here? But you can tell if you kind of isolate some guys, you could tell that's why the fourth line's playing so well, because they're all playing for jobs next season. They've been great the last month, and there's a reason for that. So you look for little wins. I think that's, as a fan, I'm just looking. And I said Shane Pinto had a bit of a rough night. Ridley Gregg was fantastic, I thought. And I saw some other people talking about it too. So yeah, just little things like that. And it wasn't, like you said, they didn't get walked on. But it was one of those ones that didn't feel like the Panthers broke a sweat, like they had an easy night. Whereas the Sens, it felt like we're working their bags off for every chance they got, and they didn't get a goal. So it's one of those moments. I don't even know how you evaluate that game as a general manager. There's what I played, obviously, hockey a while ago, but when I was playing and it was tryouts and stuff like that, if you're on a team where during tryouts you either kill a team 10-0 or you lose 10-0 in tryouts because everything's all over the place, it's impossible to identify who's good, who's bad, all of this. So I really wonder during these stretches how they're evaluating players, because they're out of it. The team, even though they say they don't think they're out of it, they have to know they're out of it. So I wonder what Staios and co are thinking, and how they look at this game. Like, how do they look at this game from a perspective of Shabbat versus Chikrin and all this stuff like that we're going to be talking about in the summer. But you can go down a rabbit hole thinking about all that.
Yeah, this is going to be a key time to evaluate kind of which players are going to be part of the problem or have been part of the problem, and which players are going to be part of the solution here. And I'm sure that's what the management group is doing. Now, well, I called it a fine cast. Sensburner, thank you. Appreciate the comment. Doesn't feel the same. Sensburner says, I'm not fine. They physically bullied us 5 days ago and injured Timmy Mikkola with a big hit on Tim Stützle that put him out of the lineup. Tonight, we had to rely on Greg and Brandstrom to bring some bite. Now, look, this is a fair comment by Sensburner. Like, again, we talked about the outcome of the game, 2-0. Who cares? Like, it doesn't mean anything to the Sens. I don't think it affects Florida's position too much either. This is just a nothing burger of a game as far as the score goes. But if you're the Ottawa Senators and you talked about guys playing for their jobs. Well, sure, Zach McEwen has a couple years left on the contract. Boko and Mama, like these guys are brought up. Let's not kid ourselves. We know what these guys do. We know what these guys are supposed to do. And Sensburn is right. Like you got Ridley Gregg. He's the one that ends up fighting Mikkola. Now that one felt like to me that it was more Mikkola didn't like the hit that Ridley laid on him in the corner and said, all right, if you guys are going to just rough me up, then I'm just going to bite the bullet right now. I'll fight you right now, Greg, because I know I can take a piece of you, and hopefully that settles it. Now, Zach McEwen, he does end up having a fight with Gadjevic there, but unfortunately, that doesn't really go McEwen's way either. But I kind of thought Gadjevic jumped him a little. Like they were showing on the broadcast, Noodles was explaining, hey, McEwen and him have talked about this. They know they're going to fight, but I don't think McEwen was ready in that moment. And he gets grabbed, and like it's 5 quick haymakers to the face. And at that point, McEwen's got nothing left there. So he kind of gets the wrong end of that. And then Ridley Gregg can only do so much up against Mikkola. So I don't know how you felt about this, Jack, or people in the chat. Like, did it feel like the Ottawa Senators, didn't really properly flex their might and tried to push back on the big brother syndrome here?
No, and that's the whole thing. Like this can of worms of Tkachuk versus Tkachuk. It's like, I'll be honest, I didn't even notice Matthew Tkachuk at all tonight. He didn't do much. I thought Brady was more impactful in terms of a 1v1, but these 2 Tkachuk players are advertised as, and the whole family, right? It's drag your team into the fight. You want to play for them as a leader, XYZ, whatever. And I'm not going to hate on Brady because I've got his jersey. It's literally like hanging in the other room. He's the best thing that's happened to this team in the last 7 years. It's not even a question. But when you watch what his brother does at other, and he's done it now with 2 teams pretty much. He's had playoff success with both teams. It's hard not to be jealous because where is this with Brady? I know that he doesn't control who's on the roster, but you just mentioned a bunch of guys in the lineup who could drop him. And it doesn't like, I'm not on either side. I don't hate fighting. I don't love it, but when it happens and it's impactful, I think it's an important part of the game. And you're right. Like it just feels like the Panthers as a team buy into that more than the Sens do. And I don't think it's a knock on Brady per se, but it's something to consider because Steve Stais said that they're building this team around Brady. So if that's the mindset, then do it. Go get more Ridley Greggs. There's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of players who play like rats. But I don't think that the Sens even got pushed around tonight. It just felt like I said, the Panthers didn't have to break a sweat. Yep. It felt like the Panthers knew we can take care of business and just kind of coast in, do 60 minutes of cardio, and then we're good to go. Let's go on to the next one. Bide our time until the playoffs. They get their 2 points, probably lock up second place in the division. And you're sitting here as a Sens fan saying, look, I know they don't have much to play for, but I know Martian's talked about it a lot, and you guys have talked about it, but the identity of being hard to play against for the Sens, I think that's completely out the window now, right? Where the more they added, the more skill they added, all this stuff, and it just hasn't really translated. I think they've lost that aspect of their game because they're a better team overall. But that also being said, it doesn't mean they're not trying, like they are. Yeah. It's just I don't think that they have that bite in their lineup that they did. Like, again, Greg is exactly what you would think a Tkachuk team would play like. I can't really think of another guy on their team who you don't like to play against. And it's being hard to play against. That's what their mantra was when they started this rebuild. So, yeah, I don't know. And I don't even think that's indicative of how the team is built. Like I said, like I think they're still a good team. They're better than they are on paper, or on paper they're better than they are right now. But I don't know. It's unfortunate seeing the Panthers do this and knowing that they're doing it because they're building around their leader in Matthew Tkachuk. They play for him and play like that. And it's frustrating when the Sens don't really seem to follow suit other than a couple guys.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of it is just kind of the fatigue of a long season and another losing season, but certainly this team doesn't have that same kind of aura around them where they did in years past. For sure, other teams are going to out-talent them, but they're going to have a hard time getting to W's, and it just seemed like the Florida Panthers had an easy time getting to a W here. So the Ottawa Senators lose 2-0 to the Florida Panthers. It's a tough one. It's a vibe cast, or no, not a vibe cast. It's a fine cast here. Got my cast mixed up. But if you're looking for somewhere with good vibes, you already know where to go. The Glebe Central Pub. They are an official sponsor of the Locked On podcast of the Ottawa Senators. Every postcast, you guys know, we're talking about the Glebe Central Pub. Visit them at 779 Bank Street in the heart of the Glebe. Great food, great drinks, great service. They love Sens fans so much. Go to their website, check out the Sens shuttle. There's only one game left. I'll tell you that, because there's only one home game left for the Sens, April 13th. Ross, me, Martian will have boots on the ground. Jack, you going to make it out to the home closing game up against the Habs?
No, unfortunately, no, not this year. That was fun last year, though. That was a good time. That was a great time.
Oh, yeah. We usually try to make it out to the home closer. And if you want to as well, you can go to the Glebe Central Pub shuttle. $17 round trip. Sue, the bus driver, will get you there on time and then pick you back up in the parking lot and bring you right back to the Glebe Central Pub to keep the good vibes going. And yeah, hot lunch. I do know the cost of the vibes at the GCP. The vibes are free at the GCP. So we love seeing that. And we love hearing whenever you guys are able to go to the Glebe Central Pub. So guys, check it out today. It's the Glebe Central Pub at 779 Bank Street. This episode is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the official online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, and for a good reason. It's North America's #1 sportsbook. Why would you go anywhere else? You got to check out FanDuel. They have all the greatest odds for whatever sport you want to bet on. Hockey, NBA, baseball's in full swing. Go to FanDuel to place your bets. And right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. So what are you waiting for, Sens fans? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, everyone. It is the Locked On Senators podcast, the Postcast. I'm Brandon Piller, joined by Jack Richardson. Jack, good to have you back. The people in the chat are stoked that you're back in the mix here as we're breaking down an Ottawa Senators 2-0 loss to the Florida Panthers. Now, we already talked about some of the fights that happened. Those happened pretty quickly in the game. So we can take a look at the goals that the Florida Panthers scored. No Sens goals, unfortunately. But you already kind of broke down the first goal, Jack. And look, as a hashtag goalie-friendly show, you got to tip your cap to Stolarz here. Like, that's just a heads-up play. The Florida Panthers are on the power play. The Sens are trying to make a full change, get that PK unit changed. And Stolarz, head up, makes a tape-to-tape pass to Lundell, like a two-line pass to Lundell at the blue line. He goes in all alone and goes 5-hole on Korpisalo there. Jack, you mentioned that Shane Pinto is one of the guys kind of caught in that change, but I think that's one where you got to look at that whole unit that was changing before. And, you know, I get the urgency of trying to change a penalty-killing unit. You don't want to get hemmed in your own zone like that. But that's one of those moments where it's like, okay, maybe let's get 3 men changing here and have one guy ready just in case, eh?
Yeah, so I'm only looking at Pinto because he was on the right side. He was the forward on the right side. And when it goes down, typically you got to just be there, because if you're there, Stolarz isn't sending that puck up. Like, Pinto was in the position he could have been. If he just even floats up to the red line, that pass isn't going to be made. Then the Panthers go back behind their net, do that whole regroup. Pinto can get off. Bob's your uncle kind of thing, right? So it falls on Pinto a little bit, but again, it's the whole unit. Like, I think Brandstrom just passed it down to the corner, which again is not a bad play, because you want to, the softer you dump it in, the more time you waste, all that obviously. But how many, like the poor line changes feel like a pretty common theme for the Sens. I think they get scored on them a lot, it feels like, anyway. And This was just another one where you can't fault Korpisalo. I'm not going to fault him on any of the goals. I think a breakaway, and then we'll get to the second one. But this is the one where you just kind of put your hands up and you say, okay, well, what else is going to happen? Because that's when I thought, I don't know about you, I think it was mid first period that happened. I thought it was going to be another, okay, here we go. Here's another 6-0 game. It was and I will say that, brought to you by FanDuel, I might have had a little bit sprinkled responsibly on Anton Lundell, first goal scorer.
First goal scorer and you hit it. Nice, buddy. That's a rare one to cash in on.
I say responsibly, I had $1 and it was at $1 and I put it on. $18 in my pocket, not bad. But
Hey, there you go.
yeah, thought I'd mention that because that doesn't happen every day.
Yeah, seriously. I can't remember the last time I got a first goal scorer. That's pretty good to.
I don't think I've ever done it. I don't think I've ever
Yeah,
done it.
it's tough to do,
Yeah.
especially when it's Anton Lundell on a power play assisted by Stolarz. I don't know how many people had that one lined up, but that's how this game starts off on the score sheet for the Florida Panthers. And then the second goal, yeah, I'm with you, Jack. I'm not blaming Corpy on this second goal either. Bennett puts it in the middle for Mikkola. He drops it for Cousins, and Cousins comes across and rips it past Corpy. Like, sure, Nick Cousins, not exactly an NHL All-Star, more of a goon type guy these days, but you give an NHL player at that time and space in the slot, he's going to be able at the very least to make a really hard save opportunity for a goalie, but he beats Corpy clean here. Not one of Corpy's typical bad goals, head shaking here. Honestly, I'm not even that upset at the Sens defense on that play. I just think that was overall just kind of great teamwork by the Florida Panthers to get that puck in the right spot, and Cousins executes.
Well, and it was a slick play from the enemy anyway. We didn't even really hit on it. The reason Greg went after Mikkola, I know it was a rough hit, but I think they were targeting him. Joseph went at him before that. I think that was because Stützle was hurt by Mikkola. Like, that's why Timmy wasn't playing these past few games. He was hit pretty dirtily, I thought, last game. Brule, I am back. Jack is back. Appreciate that. Thank you. So Mikkola on that second goal, he kind of sets a pick on Zub.
Yep.
And the Sens did it a couple times later in the game, but just didn't score. And I think it happens more often, but when a goal is scored off of that, you realize it more and you notice it. Zub was just completely picked and screened, and they didn't call it because if you call it once, you got to call it all the time, all of that, obviously. But that's why Cousins has so much space. And again, though, you can't blame Korpisalo. I think when you know that both goals on Korpisalo, when we're immediately just like, it's not his fault. Yeah. It just wasn't the Sens' night, because Korpisalo has been the worst goaltender in the NHL by a mile, and he wasn't tonight. He wasn't the reason they lost. Which has not been the story for most of the season.
No, it really hasn't, as he gets 28 saves on 30 shots. Good for a .933 save percentage. Like, that's all you can really ask from Korpisalo here, is those goals weren't his fault and he keeps the team in it. Now, did he make any kind of highlight reel saves that kept them in it? Not so much. Like, there was a couple good ones that you want your goalie to have, but it's not like him and Stolarz were having some sort of epic duel here. It was just a matter of the Panthers found two ways to sneak it past the Sens, and the Sens couldn't really get any good enough opportunities to beat the Florida Panthers here. So here we are, another shutout at the hands of the Florida Panthers. 3 out of 4 games. In those 3 games where they shut the Panthers out, they outscore them. What? I'm trying to do math here. 13-0. Yeah, 6-5-2, 13-0. So that's tough. Jack, you mentioned it, so I'll just kind of lob you a softball here. But who is your Sens Central standout for tonight's game presented by the Glebe Central Pub? There's one guy you highlighted, and if you don't touch on him here, that's what I'm going to talk about, because there weren't a whole lot of standouts in my mind.
Yeah, I'm taking Ridley Gregg. I don't have any stats in front of me to get a few shots on goal. Definitely a few hits. That fight with Mikkola, who's 6-7 inches taller than him. Yeah. I can't say enough about Ridley Gregg. I'm sure you guys are the same. Like he's the best. He's having a great rookie season, given where he is in the lineup. So that's the reason. Like, him and Shane Pinto are reasons to be excited about this team. Like, there are still a ton of reasons. Like, there's no shortage of reasons to be optimistic about the Sens. They could easily turn this thing around. I don't think anyone would bat an eye. That being said, when you know, like Greg is a good player, and I think he'll be impactful in his career with the Sens. But if he's standing out this much, competing the way he is, I think that's an issue. So it kind of just speaks to a bigger thing to me. Like, when you see someone do what Greg is doing, it makes you wonder, why don't they all do that? And it's a completely fair thing to question for a team that's 28th in the NHL. So I'm a big fan of Ridley Gregg. I think he's had a very consistent season. Didn't get rewarded on the score sheet tonight, but he's been great all year. So he's my Sens Central standout tonight.
Yeah, that was the guy for me too, Jack. I thought he had a nice game, a couple good chances, really showed some extra hustle. There was that play where he has a big hit. I forget who the hit is on, but big hit on Cousins. So that's who you want to see him crunch. And then he hustles back and he's back checking quick enough and with enough intention that Sam Bennett has the puck on a stick. He's about to shoot it, and Greg gets the stick lift to erase a chance there. So it's little things like that where, you don't want to shift where you get nothing done really. You're just out there for some cardio. But Greg, he gets a hit, says, oh, damn, they're coming back. I'm not going to, just slowly get back here and just get in position. I'm going to make sure I'm hustling back so I can stop any sort of offensive chance. And he gets a good stick lift there. Good play for Ridley Gregg. I'm with you. He was the only standout for me in this one, unfortunately. Like, there was a couple, I thought Sandy had a nice game. He ended up with that big play where the Panthers ring the puck off the glass and it hits a stanchion, and Korpisalo is not ready, but Sanderson was right there to stop. I think it was Barkov too that had an opportunity to score. So that was a big defensive play by Sandy. But I don't know. Other than that, not a whole lot to get excited about here.
So you know what this game though reminds me, or hammers home too, is how valuable Tim Stützle is, because we talked about how Stolarz didn't steal this game. The Panthers just locked it down. I know the Panthers are a good team. They're not one of the best defensive teams in the league. That was not a clinic by them by any means. I think for the Sens, the amount of offense that Stützle drives is pretty underrated, and he hasn't really missed a lot of games over the past few seasons, a handful here and there. But when he's gone, you notice. And I think I personally, I've obviously there's been a ton of hate for every player this year from the Sens, but I think that stuff about Stützle gets a little bit blown out of proportion. He's 22, he's so young and he's so good that I think a few games like this, it just kind of reiterates how important he is to the team. And I certainly missed watching him tonight, because there were a couple of moments just even puck carrying, getting the puck in the zone, just underrated things you kind of take for granted watching him every night, that they were really missing tonight. I think that's why they couldn't generate a lot of offense, especially at 5-on-5.
Yeah, and Jack, you mentioned that the Florida Panthers maybe not the top team defensively. Well, they also didn't have a big part of their D-core. No Aaron Ekblad and no Oliver Ekman-Larsson either. So they're missing two of their kind of top guys, and they're still able to get a shutout here up against the Ottawa Senators. Now, I don't know if anyone in the chat has some bigger picture stuff you guys want us to get into. Jack told me that he's been sitting on a lot of Sens takes that he hasn't really had the opportunity to get out. So if you guys have anything you want to tee Jack up with, let us know and we can get into it. Or Jack, if you have something ready to go that you want to get into here, go off, buddy.
I got something to bring up because you just mentioned D-core, and I love that because the Sens D-core was healthy tonight. This was a healthy Sens D-core, right? For I'm not missing anyone, I don't think. That was a full 6-man unit for them.
Even right? Travis Hamonic was available if they wanted him.
So that's a full 6-man unit. You got Chabot, you got Chychrun, Sanderson, Zub. That's your full top 4. Brandstrom, JBD. Is it Chabot or Chychrun? They're not both going to be back next season. I don't think there's a chance in hell that both of them are back next season. Personally, for me, I'm going to just start, and maybe the chat. I know you guys have talked about it at length, 100%, but I haven't. So I'm excited for this. So
all right,
I'm on the train of keeping Thomas Chabot. Because I think the way he's played the last little bit, even tonight, just in one game, I thought he was way better than Chychrun. Chychrun was in the first for sure, just missed passes, all this. The thing is, I know Chabot's contract, people don't want to he makes too much money, all this, but that's also part of the reason you might have to keep him, because you're easily going to get a better return for Chychrun. I think if both players are even and you're thinking about return, Chychrun to me has got to be the one who is you consider moving. But that's kind of it. I don't see a world where they both fit on the team, because let's be honest, at this point they're fighting for who's the second best defenseman on this team, because Sanderson is miles ahead of both of them. I think he's just taken the reins, which we all expected. So who's going to be the second defenseman? I think it's perfect for Chabot. I don't know about you, but I think also the thing Shabbat's saying off the ice, he's a leader on this team. He's saying we need to reevaluate how we approach the summer. All this stuff to me just feels like he's got to stick around at least one more year, and then you can go from there. Because if this happens again, there's new conversations. Like we're talking every single player. I think if they aren't in the conversation next season, we're talking about everyone. I think so. To me, Shabbat has to come back. Just run it back with him. See what you can get. He's had a pretty good season, I think, overall. Yeah. Offensive defenseman. He's been injured, which is tough. It's kind of funny because Chychrun was the guy coming in where you don't know if he's going to be healthy, and he's been healthy all season. And Shabbat's been the Band-Aid, unfortunately. But I think overall, Shabbat's had a better year. So that's where I am. I don't know. It's kind of pretty all over the place in the chat, which means it's a good discussion because people are on either side. I can see benefits to Chychrun keeping him, but I don't know about you, but I'm on Team Shabbat at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, Shabbat is the longest tenured Ottawa Senator now. So definitely he's a big part of this leadership core. And I'm with you, Jack. I think for so many reasons, I think it makes more sense to hold on to Shabbat and trade Jacob Chychrun. Now, Frank Saravalli, he did a video today where he suggested the opposite. He said, you're probably going to want to get out of that contract if you're the Sens and Shabbat. And it's interesting because Shabbat has a no trade clause that kicks in 2024, 2025 season. So if they're going to trade him, it's got to be pretty soon here. Otherwise, it's going to be a little more difficult as it's a 10-team no trade list. So not impossible, but certainly it's a bit more of an obstacle there. And I just think Jacob Chychrun hasn't really fit in this lineup. Now, maybe with Shabbat not there, he would find a place, but the offense has been there, and on the power play, that shot is a really big asset that without Norris, you really want someone that can pull the trigger like that. So I appreciate that, but Chychrun just hasn't been defensively what we thought and had hoped he would be. And you're looking at Chychrun, 1 year left on his deal after that. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of money he's going to command. You got to work on an extension there. Whereas Shabbat, I feel like he's kind of valued at the right spot. And especially when the cap goes up, he's going to be taking less percentage of that pie. And I think it's going to make the contract look a little better. And I just think he fits in with this team a little bit more than Jacob Chychrun has for whatever reason. So I think I'm on keeping Shabbat here. But I do agree with you. There's no way they can roll into next season with both of those guys, not only for the fact that it just doesn't make a lot of sense roster-wise, but also they need to move a contract to acquire some flexibility cap-wise, and they need to try to recoup some assets here as the Ottawa Senators prospect pipeline is basically dried up, and they can't just run it back here. Like this team simply is not good enough the way it is, and you might need to make change just to show some accountability, if anything, to be like, hey, what we've seen is not acceptable. We got to make changes and we got to start holding guys accountable. So I think that is the direction they'll probably take.
Yeah, like at its core too, like if you just had to say who are you more likely to get a better return for right now? If your answer is Chychrun because you think he's a better player, I think it makes more sense to move him. I know that might sound crazy, but think about it in the sense like, okay, let's say you move on from Shabbat. Then you've got Chychrun, who you need to extend, who is now going to have more money to take because they move Shabbat. Then you sign him to, even if you get less than Shabbat, you're just locking in another 8 years, whatever it is, for a guy who's at worst the same, right?
Yeah.
So to me, I think you just stick with Shabbat. Now, that being said, if they want to absolutely ripple this team and send a shockwave through the core, trading Shabbat is probably the move.
I would do it. Yeah.
Right? Like that's probably the one, the guy who's been here the longest. All the guys know him. He was there when they all came in. I can see that being the way Staios goes maybe, but I don't know, man. Like I find it hard to believe that, I know that Shabbat gets ridiculed defensively, but I don't know if Chychrun's that much better defensively. So it's pick your poison a little bit, and I think Chychrun's more movable, so it makes more sense to move on from him. But we'll see. Like it could be anything. They could do anything. Maybe they will roll back with all of them. I don't know.
I mean, we don't know what this management is going to do. This is going to be the first real opportunity for them to kind of fully put their fingerprints on things and have an off season where they can start moving this team in the direction that they want. And I think Sens fans are excited for that just because I feel like the last regime had gotten very predictable with what they were going to do and how the off seasons would go for good and bad reasons. Like we all fell trapped to the summer of Pierre and the hype of that off season when he was making big moves. It seemed like this team was going the right way, and then things weren't working out. And the draft picks they traded away are prospects that they really could use right now, at least to instill some hope into the hearts of Ottawa Senators fans. But I think that's a discussion, Shabbat, Chikrin, that we're going to have continuously as the offseason is getting close here. The Ottawa Senators only have 4 more games. The next game will be on the road against the Tampa Bay Lightning, then the home closer on the 13th versus the Habs, then a back-to-back road trip. Oh, what a nice treat to end of the season, up against 2 of the top teams in the East to finish things off. So their work is cut out for them here. We're all grinding. We're all trying to make it to the end of the season here, and we can have a good offseason. Sens fan and Van say, Chicky makes mental mistakes and will get a better return. He's already gone. It does seem that way. We've talked about it a lot on the Postcast. Like, the decision-making just doesn't seem quite there. And for a guy that's as jacked as him, he doesn't really dominate physically the way you would hope or the way you would think he would. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the decor here. This has been another great postcast. Thanks everyone in the chat. We got about 100 people here. The season rolls on for the Ottawa Senators. Jack, I want to thank you for hopping back in the mix. Always glad to have you chatting Sens with us here, buddy. So appreciate you getting back on the postcast here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great hopping on. Love you guys. You guys are monsters. I said this to you before we started recording, but you guys are monsters. Just pumping out all this content. It's awesome. You're the top of the game for Sens content. And all the people watching, 100. I can't even see the number, so 100 people watching. You guys are all sickos. You guys are sickos in the best way possible as well. So yeah, happy to be here. What I have a question though. Everyone keeps putting in the chat. What does submissive to the spins mean? I think I have an idea. Is that something with Tankathon?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. All right. Well, we don't want to deprive the good people in the chat of a spin. So Jack, I famously coined the term I am submissive to the spins. I don't know, like when was that, guys? Like in December? Like I was really trying to hold off. Ross was getting into the draft and I was like, no, I'm not doing this so early. And then one day I just cracked and I said, you know what, guys, I am submissive to the Tankathon spin. So for the good people in the chat, we will do some Tankathon spins now.
Let's do it.
Producer Ross not in the building, so we're going to see how I can set this up. You guys got to tell me if you can see this. I'm going to share my screen.
Now, hopefully it's updated to tonight because Montreal just waxed the Flyers, so they might have jumped ahead.
Okay, you guys can all see that? Jack, you got me? Are we on Tankathon here?
Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I will take the first spin here. Let's see how this goes. Tankathon spin, 2024 NHL Draft Lottery Simulator. The Ottawa Senators are in 7th with the 7th best odds at 6.5%. Here we go.
Oh, come on.
Okay, I mean this is kind of a typical spin here where the top 3 teams just kind of have a quick shuffle. So the Anaheim Ducks get the first overall pick. Luckily,
good for them.
Basically, Jack, what we've been doing is saying as long as Eastern teams don't fly ahead of the Sens, we'll take it, and that's fine. So not the best pick spin here, but we'll move on. Jack, I got a spin here for you. So this is Jack's spin. Here we go.
Oh,
well, yeah. See, Jack, you done goofed.
Pittsburgh.
You allowed the Pittsburgh Penguins to move up 10 spots to the 4th spot. That's a random way to win the lottery. 10 spots up to move into 4th. Other than that, things pretty much stay the same. Anaheim, Chicago switch. All right, Citizens, get us some positivity here, guys. Here we go. The Citizen spins. Okay.
We haven't moved. We haven't moved once.
We did not move one single time in the 3 spins. The Columbus Blue Jackets, however, move up to 2nd. That's where I want to be. I want to be picking in that 2nd overall spot. So, unfortunately, the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to have the right to select Artem Levshunov. That's the guy I'm looking at. Jack, quickly before we wrap up here, is there a guy in the draft that you've got your eye on? or you haven't got there yet?
So okay, I'm so disconnected from and draft things on purpose because I was like, no, we're not.
Yeah, you
I did
tried
this.
to avoid it, eh? Yeah.
I did this in 2022, 2023, and I'm doing it again. Is Artyom Levnashov?
Artem Levshunov. He's a big right shot defenseman.
Okay, that's what I was asking. That
Yep.
makes sense. He's projected second or third, if I'm correct.
He's
right?
probably going to go second if things go the way we think, but who knows?
So I will say that's exactly what the Sens need.
Yeah.
However, Celebrini, if they get the first overall pick, if we luck out, because lottery luck, as good as the drafting has been in the top 5, has not been there for the Sens. They have not had good lottery luck. This Celebrini kid. So quick story. One of my best friends plays at Maine University. He's humbly a depth player, but he had a good year.
Nice.
And they played BU a number of times this season. Boston University, they played against them. He says Celebrini is a joke in the best. Like he says he's that good. And this, I mean, obviously it's when you get to different levels, it changes and everything like that. But this kid is 17 years old, lighting up college hockey. And my friend is my age, so he's an 01. He's 23 years old, 22 years old, getting worked by a 17-year-old at like the highest possible level he can play. So he's special. Like if the Sens get the first pick, I don't think we should galaxy brain ourselves.
No,
they're going to pick Celebrini,
yes,
and then you build around that. But regardless, that's who I have my eyes on. I have my eyes on the projected first overall pick. That's who I've got.
Hey, Jack's got big expectations here. Jack expects the Ottawa Senators to draft Macklin Celebrini at first overall. Love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Sens deserve it. Like we haven't even the Dadonov situation is like we when that happened, admittedly for me, I thought, hey man, it's not going to matter. Playoff team, it'll be a playoff pick. Like it's not, kick the can down the road. I was thinking they could even get rid of this one and just get it over with. This might be a top 5 pick. Like, what a and on top of that, how long the sale took. The NHL owes the Sens. They owe the Ottawa Senators. They owe Michael Landlauer. Give us the first pick.
Yeah. Maybe some weighted lottery balls in the Ottawa Senators' favor, and we can forget about the terrible punishment of taking a first round pick away. Now I'm sure the Sens are just going to keep kicking that can down the road because they're going to keep acquiring high draft picks that they can't give away. So 2026, you can call it right now. The Ottawa Senators are going to give that pick up because they're hoping that they'll be in the best position by that point.
Well, so I think rabbit hole again, but they decide 24 hours after the lottery.
Yes.
So let's say
whether it's going to be this year, next year, or 26. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say so after this year, do they have to decide what year it's going to be?
No, they can just say we're not doing it this year.
Right. Okay. So let's say in a year from now, they're in the playoffs. The lottery happens. I believe it always happens first-ish round of the playoffs in the middle of that. So if the Sens are in the middle of a first round, like what pick are you okay giving up? Is it like mid-teens? Like if they're in the playoffs, it's like just get rid of it. We'll move on.
Jack,
it'll be a good discussion.
If the Ottawa Senators make the playoffs, the NHL can have all our picks for the whole.
They already have them all.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, just you can have them all. If we get playoff hockey, I don't give a damn about the draft at that point. But yeah, that's going to be a tough day because I think it's something that we're probably going to sort of forget about, or at least put in the back of our minds, and then 2026 is going to roll around, and we're going to be like, God dang it, that Dadonov trade. Here goes our draft pick. Because you're hoping at that point, Jack, they're not upset about losing it because they don't get to draft a player. They're upset about losing it because they don't get to trade that first round pick for a rental that's going to take them deep into a playoff run in 2026. All right, we're getting off the rails now. We've completely gone delusional here, worrying about the 2026 draft pick from the Dadonov trade. But that's what the Postcast is for. Sometimes the games don't always give you the most to get into. So we got into some juicier topics on tonight's episode of the Postcast. So we appreciate everyone for hanging out with us. It's always a blast. We know the Ottawa Senators, not exactly the best team in the NHL, but Ottawa Senators fans are best in class, as Andlauer would like to coin the term there. So thanks everyone for joining us. For myself, Brandon Piller, for Jack Richardson, thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you to the Glebe Central Pub, our sponsors, and we keep the content going, Jack. You think you're impressed with the content now? We're keeping it going. You're going to get another episode of the Locked On Senators podcast tomorrow, wherever you get your podcasts, on Spotify, Apple, Google, and of course on YouTube. So thank you, everyone. Another edition of the Postcast, a 2-0 loss to the Florida Panthers. Let's get some Go Sens go in the chat, because it's the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.